Welcome to the Nutracast, a production by Nutra Ingredients USA. I'm Danielle Masterson. Thank you for joining me here on the Nutracast, where we talk and share insights from inside the nutrition industry. A Pittsburgh-based biotech company is using cutting-edge technology to fill the gaps in the growing and evolving cannabis industry. With several nutraceutical companies incorporating CBD into their formulas, Hemp Synergistics recently introduced a patent-pending hemp dry powder. To tell us more about that, I am joined now by Mark Mangieri, Director of Sales and Product Development at Hemp Synergistics. Welcome to the Nutracast, Mark.
Hi, Danielle. Thanks for having me.
So, Mark, you haven't been on the job that long. You joined Hemp Synergistics about 6 months ago. What's that been like? Not just in terms of where the hemp and CBD space is, but in terms of COVID. I mean, it has to have been kind of a wild beginning for you.
Indeed. Like most hemp-based companies, this is a new company. We've been around for about 1 year and started real business operations only about 6 months ago, right when I started. And that was maybe 2 weeks before COVID or right as it was happening. So I started working remotely and didn't really meet the full team until into April. We were a skeleton crew earlier in the year and practiced social distancing in the office here. And once summer came around, we started meeting at the office, and we have a full-size lab and a giant warehouse. And for us, thankfully, we haven't really skipped a beat being considered an essential company. So we've been able to keep moving forward and develop the products like BioDry and some others. We're doing the best we can like everybody else. And thankfully, this has been an industry and an ingredient that's been coveted during this time. So we're grateful and happy to be in this space during this time.
I did see that a lot of nutraceutical companies are integrating CBD into their current dry powder and encapsulating into their immunity formulas. Tell me a little bit about that and also about BioDry, your new product.
Well, the hemp quote-unquote industry has really come online since the Farm Bill in 2018, which basically gave the go-ahead for farmers to start growing. And so 2019 was the first full year of full crop production and harvesting and access to good amounts of ingredients. And then you start seeing the product infiltrate itself into commerce. And a nice spot is the nutraceutical industry. However, as of even today, CBD and the other cannabinoids, CBD is one of the cannabinoids within hemp oil. So all these cannabinoids are mainly found in a retail setting in dedicated CBD stores. That's kind of their coming of age location. And when I came on board, the rise in popularity of this ingredient is for good reason. It has some excellent research done on it already. A lot more needs done, but it's very, very promising. My background is product design, product formulation. I look at it not as an industry, I look at it as an ingredient. And prior to us starting business operations, like I said earlier in the spring, right before COVID, we realized that not many products were incorporating CBD and the other cannabinoids into a nutraceutical in the traditional way. And so by that, I mean, most of the consumption is by like a tincture or maybe a soft gel, which are kind of complicated to make, or a gummy, which they basically just spray it on the outside of the gummy. Because the CBD and hemp oil in general, once it's refined to meet consumer standards, is very sticky and viscous and hard to work with. And so what we were able to do is refine that from a sticky, messy goo into a dry, free-flowing powder that you can use in capsules. You can put it into a drink, like a powdered drink that you mix at home, like a protein drink, or even use it into some recipes. So this dry, free-flowing nature is the reason behind the name BioDry. The other selling point of it, the CBD concentration is very high. It's 50%. Whereas prior to this, other powders were maxed at maybe 10, 15%, and they offered a nasty taste The BioDry is tasteless, odorless. It really lends itself to nutraceutical manufacturing, whereas the hemp oil or the CBD cannabinoid just doesn't. It's just too hard to work with in that way.
So, Mark, you're saying it's about 5 times more potent than what's on the market. What impact is that having on the nutraceuticals industry?
Well, it's a brand new product. Our official release is September 1. So the impact is to be determined. But the freedom and the flexibility this ingredient offers allows you now to put, let's say, 50 milligrams of this BioDry into a capsule that yields 25 milligrams of CBD. And now you have 600 or 700 milligrams of space to add complementary ingredients that accentuate the effects of hemp oil and ingredients that complement the effects of hemp oil versus needing way more space just to get those few milligrams of CBD. So it offers the formulators freedom and flexibility.
Gotcha. And you said it comes out on September 1st. When it comes to working in the hemp and CBD industry, you have a food and dietary supplement background. Is that helpful in your current role?
Yes. My experience really has kind of trained me to look at all these interesting ingredients as ingredients versus building a whole industry around one of them. Understanding how and why these individual ingredients work and how to complement them. You know, I started in product design in the late 90s and started my own brand in the mid 2000s. And then about 5 years ago, started a functional food company. And so I've done a lot of business with brands like GNC, Vitamin Shop, General Grocery, convenience stores. And so weaving the story of research and branding and value is a very valuable thing, especially when talking about a new ingredient like hemp oil and CBD, which even though it's popular, it's still new to a lot of people. And so the way we are able to make the production easier and make it more affordable allows this industry to grow faster is our goal, is to bring the price down and to reach more people. And this BioDry helps us do that.
I was reading that hemp has gone down in price. Is that true? And how does that affect you?
Yes. Well, the price fluctuations so far have been a function of a rush of a lot of farmers to get into this industry. You know, a lot of farmers heard that it was now legal and then started to grow it, and the supply outweighed the demand, and the price for the actual biomass of hemp plant crashed, and then everything else kind of followed suit. And you know, then you see these natural pricing fluctuations because of this supply issue. You know, it's not good to have not enough. It's also not good to have too much. These ingredients have a shelf life. So how we handled it is we partnered with the largest organic farmer in the United States, Grimway, and secured a long-term agreement to where they're growing the hemp and then we are refining it. So we're turning it into this crude oil that's done at the field, basically. And then we refine it to something that's more valuable and THC free. And so now we have a steady supply at a steady price, at a steady consistency. There is variability in these plants. And then also the BioDry process also stabilizes those components just by the nature of the manufacturing. So what I mean by that is every batch that we produce is going to have the exact same concentration of CBD, the exact same concentration of the other minor cannabinoids, and that's all THC free.
When you say 100% THC free in your products, I'm sure you know that can be a risky claim. How do you ensure that it is in fact 100% THC free?
There's two data inputs to look at. Once we refine the hemp oil down to something that's very valuable, and it's called a broad spectrum distillate. So once it's at this broad spectrum distillate stage, we have a refinement technique and process using reverse flash chromatography. It's the most sophisticated way to isolate and remove individual cannabinoids. Now, THC is a cannabinoid that gives you that high feeling. It's most prevalent in marijuana, cannabis, but it's also prevalent in hemp. And so we focus in on that single cannabinoid, THC, and there's a process to remove it. And so once we remove it, we send it out to get tested just to make sure that what we did is correct. And then when it comes back as correct, we then use that THC-free distillate to make BioDry. And then we send the BioDry out to get tested just to double check our MAV to make sure. And so when you receive an order of BioDry, and typically the people who receive this are contract manufacturers, people who make the products. We are making the ingredient. Somebody else is going to use this ingredient into a product. And so when we send that ingredient out to the manufacturer, then they are also required to test it a third time. So from the time that the hemp has the THC removed until it goes into a product, it gets tested 3 times along the way. And each time you confirm not only the THC content, which should be 0 or non-detectable, you also confirm the other cannabinoids and the CBD to make sure that the consumer is getting what they pay for and not what they don't want, because the THC can be a dangerous cannabinoid for people who take drug tests.
Mm-hmm. For someone like me, it doesn't matter as much, but if you're an athlete or if you work in law enforcement, it's certainly an area of concern for a lot of people.
The different testing agencies or organizations that test have different standards, and we don't know those standards, and there's no way we could. And so the only answer is to make it not detectable. And so that's the process, and that's how we ensure that the process was done right.
Speaking of which, I understand that Hemp Synergistics has some other products in the pipeline. Tell me a little bit about this university-backed THC test.
So the difference between hemp, the plant, like the buds, and marijuana, the plant, the buds that you would smoke, and people do smoke hemp, is the chemical difference is significant. The physical difference is virtually 0. I personally would have a hard time telling the difference between the two. And so if you happen to have some of this hemp bud on you and you get pulled over and the police officer smells it, because it smells the same too, he smells it, he or she is obviously going to be suspicious and want to look at it. And as of right now, there is no quick and easy field test to determine or disseminate between a marijuana bud and a hemp bud. And so the likelihood of you getting arrested is very high, even though it's not illegal. It's 100% legal and very effective when you smoke it. So the THC recognition unit, or TRU, is a field test for the law enforcement to quickly and easily test to see if you have marijuana or hemp, and to avoid an unwarranted arrest.
I'm sure you heard a great-grandmother was recently arrested at Disney World because she brought her CBD into the park.
Yes, and there's a lot of tragic cases. That's one of the more tragic cases because it's rooted in such innocence. But if the police officer doesn't know or doesn't understand, you're not going to be able to explain your way out of it. Even if you're, a kind old grandma, it doesn't matter.
Right. I mean, if a great grandmother can't get out of this, who can?
No, you're in trouble. I don't know how these cases end. And unfortunately, I think some of them end in not a good way. Even if you are arrested and get out of it, quote unquote, get out of it, it's still a hassle. I'm sure you're out some money, a lawyer. It's just not a good thing. And there will be a field test eventually. And so we're leading the effort in getting one out sooner than later. An exact launch date isn't known for that, but it is pending. We want to get it out before the end of the year.
Gotcha. So that's one area that's pretty messy. Another area that's also just as messy, if not more messy, is the lack of regulations. How are you navigating that, and how do we standardize the industry?
That's a great question. I'll start by saying the industry needs regulation on this ingredient. And so the industry being the nutraceutical industry, we definitely need regulation on this ingredient. Currently, there is some regulation. Currently, there's a prescription, and it's used for treatment of seizures, some other horrible diseases, and they use CBD. Now, specifically, they use cannabidiol isolate, CBD isolate. And so that's a process to where they refine hemp oil all the way till there's nothing left except for CBD. And so that's called CBD isolate. The one very clear regulation that exists that most companies violate is they use CBD isolate, and you cannot do that because it exists in a drug. So in other words, an ingredient cannot coexist as a drug and nutraceutical. It's one or the other. And so the isolated cannabinoid CBD is definitely a drug. Now, this may feel or seem confusing, but if you look at hemp oil, I mentioned earlier that it has CBD in it. It also has other cannabinoids, CBG, CBN, THCV, other cannabinoids. And the use of multiple cannabinoids is okay. The use of only one, specifically CBD, is not okay. So that's the first regulation that I would like to see other brands started adhering to. The other regulation that does exist are claims. You cannot make claims. If you make a claim on your label, you're going to get in trouble. Or I hope you get in trouble, because then it's just a shortcut to a sale. So you really watch what you say on the label, and you have to use the actual hemp oil that's highly refined to accentuate all the cannabinoids except for THC, just one of them. So that's the existing regulation. How it's going to play out moving forward, well, I'm 100% sure I do not know. But it'll likely be something that is a barrier to some of the smaller companies, unfortunately. So we welcome the regulations. That usually comes with additional paperwork and additional testing. And these are things that, although annoying, that in of itself will help standardize the ingredient, its representation, and how it fits into the industry in general.
Mm-hmm. And as you mentioned, Epidiolex is approved to treat seizures. It just got approved for a third medical condition, I believe. So it was expanded recently. But in terms of dietary supplements, of course, we all know you cannot make claims.
Yes, well, it seems to me that the FDA is a little more picky when it comes to claims with CBD. Like there are some herbs and other nutraceuticals that help, they're anti-inflammatories. And so you could say promotes anti-inflammatory action or, something to that effect. Where with CBD, they're a little more sensitive than other ingredients. So I can understand that, if that's the price of admission, I'm in, because there's news and reports and claims through various independent studies and articles. It does that work for us. And the user can decide of its efficacy in terms of whatever issue they personally have. The use of claims infringes upon that patent, the pharmaceutical patent of Epidiolex, and it is proving to be effective. And again, that's only helping the industry.
Mark, do you have any other projects in the works right now? Anything that you can tell us about?
Yes, the BioDry has a sister product. I alluded to it a little earlier, a sister product called CBD Baked Mix. And that's a more durable, less concentrated version of BioDry to be used in baking applications in different food products. So we've tested it out in cookies, muffins, icing. We even fried a donut last week, and it actually survived the heat of a fryer.
That actually sounds delicious right now.
It's delicious, believe me. And like the BioDry, it's completely tasteless. Versus if you use a hemp oil, which is taste and recipe if you use the actual unrefined plant. But when you use BioDry or the baked mix, it does not influence taste and it does not influence recipe. We're equally excited about that, and bringing it into convenient functional foods is another nice low barrier to entry for people who haven't tried CBD. Just to buy a $2 or $3 brownie is another nice low barrier to entry for people who haven't tried CBD. Just to buy a $2 or $3 brownie, I'll give it a try, see what happens. And, that eases the consumer's concerns once they eat that brownie and there's no side effects and they didn't get high and it tasted good and maybe they're a little more relaxed or something. They're like, okay, now I know CBD won't hurt me. It doesn't affect me adversely. I'm willing to try a full tincture. So it's a nice entry product. So we're equally as excited about the baked mix.
That's exciting, and I'm sure you didn't mind helping out with some research on that.
I'm all in every day when it comes to icing and donuts and cookies and brownies. Yes, I'm in.
Mark Mangieri of Hemp Synergistics, thank you so much for coming on the Nutracast today.
Thank you. It was a lot of fun.
If you like what you just heard, you can subscribe to the Nutracast on iTunes. And for even more Nutra-related content, you can always head to nutraingredients-usa.com. Thank you so much for joining me today. I'm Danielle Masterson. As always, I'll catch you here on the Nutracast next week.